You are recording now.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be covering another topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is classical effects in Adobe Illustrator made easy. I've done a similar teaching on this with Photoshop several months ago at the Adobe Users Group. This is one that's going to be dealing with Illustrator. And what I'm seeing is there's some things that are easier to do in Illustrator than Photoshop and vice versa. And so it's good to know both of the programs because some things are just easier to do. Now, one thing you need to learn in Photoshop and Illustrator is that it's masks, okay? And there's all kind of masks in Photoshop. There's a vector mask, there's a layer mask, there's a clipping mask, there's a filter mask, there's an adjustment layer mask, there's an alpha channel mask, there's a quick mask. So there's a lot of masks in Photoshop, right? Now, when you come to Illustrator, there's only two different types of masks. There's a clipping mask and there's a opacity mask. That's the two we're going to be talking about tonight. Now, some of these can double as some of the other masks that you see in Photoshop, but there's only two masks in Illustrator, the clipping mask and the opacity mask. Now, as I've said before, and if you heard my example of the same thing that we're going to be doing in Illustrator, I did exactly in Photoshop. A mask can only do three things. It can show, hide, or protect what's underneath it, okay? And I don't care what kind of mask it is. It could be a physical mask, it could be an electronic mask, but a mask of any kind can only do three things. It can show, hide, and protect what's underneath it. Okay, if you can get that concept in your mind, you can appreciate how a mask works. Now, the golden rule, again, if you've been to any of my classes, some of you know this, black conceals, white reveals. Okay, and then gray is kind of semi-transparent. So that's the golden rule to masking. Okay, so with that in mind, what we're going to be doing tonight is not only the mask, but we're going to be doing some other effects, but most of what you can do as far as special effects in Photoshop as well as in Illustrator is using a type of mask. So let me say it like this. I just came up, by the way, I just came up with this Chopinism, and that is, if you know how to use masks, it'll separate you from the masses. Y'all like that? If you know how to use masks, it'll separate you from the masses. Okay, you want to separate yourself from the crowd, as it were. Because a lot of people, you could do, I mean, doing other stuff in Photoshop is easy. Doing other stuff in Illustrator, drawing a box in a circle, anybody can do that, right? But knowing how to mask is going to separate you from everybody else, okay? Not only that, it's going to make you more productive in what you do and make your job, and you know, one of my favorite terms in Photoshop and in Illustrator and in After Effects and InDesign, to name a few, is non-destructive, right? Your content should always be non-destructive. You should never mess with your original image. Okay, so with that in mind, let's start off with the first type of mask, which is the easiest of the bunch, and that is the clipping mask. And we're going to do the first thing that you learn if you go to any class, New Horizon or any other place. This is like the first thing you learn about masking in Photoshop and in Illustrator, because they've done basically the same. So let's do a clipping mask example, a simple clipping mask, and then we're going to do a more advanced one. So first thing I want to do is create a shape that represents my mask. Okay, remember the mask always go on top of the object. It's used to, as the term implies, to mask that object underneath it. Okay, so we're going to create like a credit card of sort. So I'm going to use I'm going to click on the M key. Let me get situated here. Okay, I'm clicking on the M key. By the way, it's good to know shortcut keys too in Photoshop and Illustrator because they're the same. And the M key is the rectangular tool. Okay, so I'm gonna draw what looks like somewhat of a credit card of sort right here. I'm gonna give that credit card a color because not that I need to, because it's gonna be replaced with the content behind it. But I'm gonna give it a color, any color, just so that you can see the object itself, or the mask, if you will. Now imagine this being a mask. Okay, it could be any color. Now, this is going to be a credit card. Now, I could have used the round rectangle, which is right here, but I always just like to use the rectangle because I can easily create a round rectangle by clicking on one of these, any one of these dots right here, and click and drag it, and notice they create a round rectangle, if you will, for that object. I love that feature, and that's been around for several versions of Illustrator. Allows you to round the corners, as it were. Okay, so now that I have the shape of my mask that I want to use, I want to clip an image inside of it. That's why it's called a clipping mask. It's used to clip an image inside of it. So we'll bring in an image. We're going to use the Command and Control and the Shift key and then the P key. And that's going to open up the place, which is called Import in most program, or Insert, right? It's basically used to import an image. And we're going to import this fireworks image like so. And then I'm going to move it over and just scale it somewhat over that image. Now, obviously, I want the image to be in the back, right? Because remember, the mask should always be on the top. That's what you need to remember. The mask should always be on the top. Actually, yeah, let's go on and do that. So let me do an easy example before I do this one, because this is a little bit more involved. Let me go to my layers panel. And I'm gonna move this one up. Oh, Control Z. Turn it off for right now. What I wanted to do was this one right here. So let's go in, and I'm gonna do Command Shift P. I'm gonna go back to that credit card. That's another clipping mask example. I want to do an easier one first, because this one is easier to see than what we're gonna be doing. So let's do another one. Control Z. And I'm gonna call this clipping mask example 1. And we'll name this one clipping mask example 2 while we're there. Now, so let's go back to 1. And then the key to, in Photoshop, in Illustrator rather, is whatever layer you're on will be the layer that content gets created in. So if I'm on this layer, content will get created in that layer. If you click on this layer, content will be created in that layer. So you need to always remember, now you can move things around if you need to, but content will always be created on the layer that's selected. Remember the golden rule, what's selected gets affected, right? And that's true of layers as well. So anyway, I got this first layer selected. So let's start off with a simple example of a clipping mask. Let's bring in the sunset image. So I'm gonna do Control or Command, Shift, and P. And I'm gonna open up this sunset image right here. And I'm gonna click and drag. This is the place gun. Allows you to shoot images on your screen. And this is true of InDesign, as you've seen last month presentation. And then I'm gonna do Shift O. Now the Shift O is the artboard. When you want to resize the artboard or create a new artboard, Shift O is the shortcut key. What I want to do is resize this artboard just to match that image size like that. Okay, so now that we have an image, let's type some text on top of it. I'm gonna hit the V key so I go to Selection Tool. Again, V key and the A key, you need to learn to use, because you're gonna always be using the selection tool, right? You always have to select stuff. You always have to move stuff, right? So you could go like, Kenneth would often say, how many miles do someone have saved if they keep going up to this menu right here, right? You don't have to go up there, just hit the V key to get the selection tool. Hit the A key and you get the sub or direct select tool. So don't go way up there to get those tools that you use all the time. Just use A and V. And keep your hand, by the way, on those keys, because you use them all the time. Now, maybe for beginners, you might want to go up there, but for more advanced user, just remember A and V, and life's going to be easy for you. You're going to save yourself a lot of traveling in visual space, if you will, by knowing those two keyboard shortcuts, because it's the truth for Photoshop as well as Illustrator, and I believe After Effects as well. Anyway, so now that I have my image, let's type T for type or text. So I'm gonna type in Hawaii. Now you can't see it because it's in black and it's small, so did I put it on the right layer? Let me see. Oh, I see what I'm doing. Okay. Yep. Why isn't that selected? Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. I was having some technical. So anyway, I got Hawaii there. I'm gonna scale that up. I'm having some problems with my control key not working. You know, I'm gonna just go up there and get it. And I'm gonna scale that up. And I'm gonna change the font to a big, bold font. So I'm gonna use Control T. Let's pull up the character panel. And a big, bold font is Impact. And I often tell people Impact makes a impact, right? So I'm gonna use that font there to make a big, bold font, if you will. Like so, and that's particularly true for this technique that I'm using. So now that I have that, and I'm gonna move that over. Why is that not working? Like so. Okay, and I want to make it as big as I can, so I'm gonna scale it up like so. Now the text should be any color because again, I'm gonna clip that image inside of that shape. Okay, now notice I have the text, which is my mask of sort, right? Anything can double as a mask and act as a mask, as long as it's on top. So I have the image on top, my text on top rather, I have the image on the bottom. What I want to do is clip this image inside of the letters of that text, right? Hence the term clipping mask. So I got to select both of them to do that. So I want to select both. Now there's several ways to select objects in Illustrator, just like Photoshop. I can lasso the whole screen and select both of them. And you can see they get selected right here with the red dots that represent the color layer, right? That's one way of selecting it. Or easier way is just to swipe across the two objects that you want to select. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'm just literally just making a little small swipe from here to here, and notice both of these got selected, okay? That's one way of selecting things. Another way is if you click and hold on the Shift key, like in most programs, to do multiple select, you can select both objects that way. So whatever you're comfortable with, I like to just swipe across stuff and select it. Anyway, I got those two objects selected, and then I can do a right click or control click on the Mac and select Make Clipping Mask. Now, another way of doing that is, and again, you should try to avoid going up to the menu, but some people, in fact, I looked at a lot of videos, and a lot of people go up here, and then they do one of these numbers, right? You ever seen a video and they go up there and they say, where's that thing? And they come down here and then they do that. You can get dizzy just looking at that, right? And then, or you can hit Command or Control 7. That's too much effort for me. An easier approach, as I was just about to do, is to just right click and do Make Clipping Mask. I said all that to say this, and that is shortcut key. You should learn shortcut keys, but there's a better way or faster way than shortcut, and that is the right click or the control click, if it's available. Now, all things are not available on the right click. I tell people I'm a click, double click, drag and drop type person. So if I can click on something and get to what I need without much fuss, that's what I'm gonna do. Now, let the magic begin. I'm gonna do Make Clipping Mask. Bam. Notice the text, the image rather, got clipped inside of that image of the text, as it were, right? Now, pay attention over here. It automatically created this clip group right here, and inside of it, put the two content in there. Just like Photoshop, you have a clipping mask, you have the underline on the mask itself. That's how you know it's a mask, or acting like a mask. It has an underline and is indented, just like Photoshop. If you know anything about clipping masks in Photoshop, you know what I'm talking about. So what I've done is clip that artwork inside each of the shapes. Now we'll do a more advanced example of this later on, but this is like the first thing you learn, and I promise you, any class you go to, this is like gonna be one of the first things you're gonna learn. And then you can do whatever you want to that image. You can add a drop shadow, you can add a stroke, whatever. Let's just add a drop shadow to it, if you will. Again, I'm gonna select what I want to affect. Let me get out of the isolation mode. And I'm gonna do effect, stylize. Now this is just like Photoshop, right? You have your drop shadow, your inner glow, your outer glow, all of those effects, right? I'm gonna do a drop shadow, and notice it added a drop shadow. Again, you can make an adjustment, but we're gonna keep it at its default. Click OK, bam, I got my drop shadow. One of the easiest things you do in Photoshop and Illustrator is create clipping masks in that manner. And this could be any shape. It doesn't have to be letters. It could be any shape that get clipped into it. So that's the first example of a clipping mask, fairly easy one. Let's look at a more advanced example that we started with earlier, but we want to complete. So I'm gonna close this
Cornelius,
one up. Yeah.
Well, do you want to take a question or any other questions in between?
Yeah, you can.
My question is, I know that Illustrator is primarily used for vectors, but you just clipped in a bitmap. So was the object that you just created, is that a vector or is it a bitmap?
It's a combination of both. Let me explain that.
Okay.
Photoshop is primarily a bitmap program, but you can include vectors because you can have vector maps, right? So you can have, it's primarily bitmap, but you can use vector inside of Photoshop. In like manner, in Illustrator, it's primarily a vector-based program. You do things with the pen tool, the text tool, the custom shapes and different things like that. Those are all vector objects, but you can bring in rather images to clip into those objects, okay? Or use them as masks. In fact, you can use a regular image, a black and white image, as a mask. So you can use images within Illustrator, and you have both. You have both. That's still an image, right? But it's just being clipped inside of that vector object.
Mm-hmm. But it's limited to the size that the image will allow. You can't blow it up to a billboard just because it was made in Illustrator.
Right. Yeah, you couldn't blow it up to a billboard. You couldn't do that because it's resolution dependent, right? So if you try to scale it up,
okay,
it will. In fact, let me just show you that. If I were to unclip this, in fact, let me just click on this and notice right now, it created this clip group, it created the mask and the image underneath that's being clipped into it. If you right click, control click on the Mac, you can release the clipping mask. This is how you release it. So let's release it back. And notice it goes back to the two objects that I started with. I got the image, which is right here. And then that's now again, if you take this object, I can scale this thing, because this is vector, I can scale this thing way big and it's gonna always look good, right? Because it's vector. You know, vector is resolution independent, meaning you can scale as big as you want or small as you want, and it's gonna always look good. Now, let me control Z. If I took that image right here and scale that up, you can see right now it's starting to pixelate, right? Because it's bitmap, it's fixed. And if you scale a bitmap up, it will pixelate.
Yep, you can't stretch it. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay,
so let's look at another example of a clipping mask, a more advanced example. In fact, we're going to do a clipping mask and an opacity mask in this next example. So I'm going to close this one up, and I'm going to turn it off. And I'm gonna turn this one on. Remember, we started with this one, and we didn't finish it. And we got these two shapes, remember? Now, again, we got my credit card of sort, right? It's gonna be acting as a mask, and I got my image. Now, the shortcut key, just like Photoshop, one of what I refer to as transferable skills, once you learn it in one application, you don't have to relearn it in another, is you hold on the control of the command key and hit the right or left square brackets, and that's how you send things to the front or back, okay? So obviously I want the mask in the front, so I want to bring it up front. And then the image that I want to clip into need to be in the back. This is the same like I did with the text, but now this is a vector shape that I'm gonna be clipping that, again, a bitmap image into. Okay, I'm gonna select both of them just like we did before. And again, it's always good to pay attention to what's going on behind the scene in the layers panel, particularly for beginners. I don't need to do this because I know what's going on, but if you're new to Illustrator or Photoshop or any other program, always pay attention to what goes on behind the scene. You know my Chopinism, go behind the scene to see what it means, right? And so you can see that both of these objects got selected. Now I'm gonna right click again and do make clipping mask. Pay attention to what happens when I do make clipping mask, bam. Notice it clipped that image. It created a new folder or subfolder, and it added those two content. And notice the underline again, letting you know this is a clipping mask, and indent it, letting you know it's a clipping mask inside of there. Now I'm gonna scale this up just a little bit, like so. Okay, now I'm gonna bring in another image, and I'm gonna clip that image inside of that mask, if you will. So I'm gonna do Command or Control Shift and P again, and I'm gonna bring in this image, and I'm gonna clip it. I'm gonna draw that image about right here. Okay, and I'm gonna move it down just because because it's been chopped off right here, and I just want this portion to show. In fact, let me just show you this. If you look right now, you can see obviously this picture is not being clipped inside of that mask, right? Because it's above the mask. See that image right there? This is the mask right here. Anything inside of this clip group gets clipped into this thing right here, this credit card of sort. I guess that's a good way of reason why I chose this example, because you can kind of appreciate what's going on easier. So I got this credit card shape, if you will, but notice this this image is above that credit card. So now watch what happens. I'm gonna take this image and we'll drag it down. It doesn't really matter where it goes, but I like to have my image or whatever I'm being clipped in above, below the mask. So I'm gonna take this image, watch, I'm gonna drag it down. First of all, I'll put it here. You see I got clipped inside? You guys see that? Now, again, doesn't really matter where, but I just like to have it, everything that's being masked above the mask. Okay, you don't have to do that, but that's just a preference for me. But notice now, you can see that it's being clipped now. Can you guys see the difference? Let me move it out. If I move it out, you see right now, you don't have a rounded corner because it's not being clipped, right? Let me do that again. We'll bring it back in, put it right there. Notice it got clipped inside it. So anything you drag inside of that folder will be clipped, okay, to that shape, as it were. Now, I still have one other issue that I want to contend with in this image, in this example. And that is, obviously, I want to get rid of this right here because that's not looking good. I want to make kind of, back in the, I don't know, about 10 years ago, they used to have photo credit cards where you have a picture of you on the credit card. And that's what I was doing right here. I want to get rid of this right here, and this right here, okay? And so I got to use yet another type of mask to do that. So this next type of mask I'm going to use is called an opacity mask, okay? Now this is similar to a layer mask or vector mask in Photoshop. If you're familiar with layer mask or vector mask in Photoshop, this is exactly like that. So what I want to do is, now I'm going to use my clipping mask and have it double as a opacity mask for what I'm trying to do. Okay, so what I want to do is select both of them. So I'm gonna hold on the Shift key and I'm gonna select, notice I got the mask selected, hold on the Shift key and I'm gonna select the image. By the way, I'm also locked that bottom layer just so that I don't inadvertently mess with it. So I got the image and the mask selected. Now I'm gonna do what they call a opacity mask. Now opacity mask is done through the transparency panel. That's this panel I'm hovering over. Okay, you see this is the image. And then when you create the mask, it's gonna show up right here. And then they're gonna have a little lock, just like Photoshop, where you can move the mask or the image or both, or either, okay, if you unlocked it. Now, when you click here, this is how you make the mask. So watch what happens when I click on this. Pay attention to what happens with this image right here. When I click mask, notice it got a little dashed line. That's your dead giveaway that this is an opacity mask, not a clipping mask, but an opacity mask. That's how you can tell the difference between the two. This is a opacity mask, and this is a clipping mask. Now, what happened to my image?
Cornelius, can you make the white background and the artwork bigger on your gray screen?
I can.
That's better. Just makes, okay. Yeah, that helps us.
Yeah, I like that better. Okay, so.
Oh, and what did you do to zoom in on it? Was it just a zoom?
Again, a shortcut key is Command and Control and a space bar, and then you can use, that's what we call whatever.
Plus or minus?
Yeah, yeah. You hit the Alt key and that gives you the minus, okay? And that way I zoom in and out easily. And that's true of Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, After Effects. Once you learn those keyboard shortcuts, you don't have to relearn them. So control the command.
Always good to spell them out for people who don't know.
Yeah, control the command and then the spacebar key will give you right here without having to go and click on this. Okay, and that's why I like to refer to that as a temporary zoom, because whatever tool you're on, it doesn't lose focus to the tool that you're currently on. It just gives you a temporary opportunity to zoom in and zoom out without having to select that tool. Again, you should always learn those key shortcuts because they're key to basically all of Adobe products that I know of. And that's Photoshop, Illustrator, Flash, or Animate, InDesign, After Effects, to name a few. Okay, now that we've created this mask, you see right here, we created a mask, but it's a black mask. Now you guys know the golden rule, right? Black conceals, white reveals. How many times have I said that? Crying out loud, right? So because it's black, black conceal means it's 5 pixels, so it's transparent. Obviously, I can't do anything if I can't see it, right? So I need to invert that mask. Notice the little button right here says Invert Mask. Click on that. And that still didn't reveal anything because that mask needs to be unclipped, okay? So I can see it. Okay, now what I want to do is get rid of this. So I'm gonna have to paint with black and white or black or white in order to remove or add to the mask. Okay, so notice this white right here. So what I'm gonna do is make sure, not on, just like Photoshop, make sure you don't have the image thumbnail selected. You wanna make sure you have the mask thumbnail selected. By the way, just to let you know, when you're on the mask, on the image rather, notice you have the layer panel right here, right? And you see all of these layers. When you click on the opacity mask, watch what happens here and pay attention to what happens here. When I click on that, notice it says opacity mask. So it shifts into the opacity mask editing mode. Okay, you got to remember to get out of that mode when you get in it though. And then that's where some people make a mistake is they forget to get out of that mode once you get into it. And then the way you do that is click on the image and you're back to normal editing. So I want to edit not the image, but the mask, right? Okay, so now that I have the mask selected, I want to use my, not paintbrush tool, but this tool right here, the blob brush tool, and select a color. And now I am going to paint away what I don't want. You guys see what I'm doing? And again, I'm not going to be perfect with this for the sake of time, but you guys kind of get the drift of what you need to do here. I'm literally just kind of painting away the area that I don't want.
How come we don't see what you're painting on the mask in the panel on the right?
Okay, good question. Reason for that is because two reasons. One, I got it inverted and then I got it clipped. Watch what happens when I click on this clip button. It disappears. Now you see the mask.
Oh.
And then remember the golden rule: black conceals, white reveals, right? And so that's what you have here. And if you invert the mask, you can see the part that I kind of clipped out so that it could be just this right here. The black conceals, white reveals. If I go the other way, let's see if I can invert and then take it off. Okay, and it's hard to see when it's in the invert mode, but basically you can use those check boxes right there to toggle your way so you can see the object and see the mask as you toggle. Because a lot of times you need to switch between the two in order to make some changes. But I'm telling you, once you master that, you can go a long way. And I say that because I remember I had one student, actually I had several students of mine when I was teaching at the Art Institute, not at the Art Institute, ITT Tech, and they spent 2 hours doing something. And then they came to me and I did the same thing in literally 2 minutes, right? Had they known math, they could have done what I did in 2 minutes that it took them 2 hours to do the same thing. They was literally doing it the long way. And I'm talking about long way, okay? Knowing math can take you, again, as I said, it'll separate you from the math, right? Because you can go a lot further with that. Can somebody monitor the chat box? Because I can't, I see some things coming in.
I am. I'm answering. So there was a couple of questions in it. I just am answering.
Okay, and if somebody have a question, just chime at me and I can address them while it's fresh on their mind. Okay, so what else can we do? Okay, now that I have that, let's go in and add some text. Oh, let me make sure. No, again, see, I made a mistake of, let me undo that. I made a mistake. I'm still in the mask mode. You see that? I'm still in the mask. You got to remember to get out of the mask mode by clicking on the image, and notice all of my image stuff comes kick back into gear. All right. Now I want to add text. So I'm going to type in some text right here. Scale that up a little bit so you can see it. And obviously I want to change that to white. I left that off, so. Okay, so anyway, I got American Express right there. I may want to make that a little bit smaller, like so. Now, just like many other programs, if you want to duplicate an object, you use the Alt key, okay? That's Photoshop, that's Illustrator, that's After Effects, that's InDesign, to name a few, okay? Hold on the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, and notice you get the double arrow. That's your dead giveaway. You see the little double arrow over there, C? That's your dead giveaway. You're gonna duplicate the object that you're clicking on. So I'm gonna drag that out, and then I'm gonna just double click to select it, and I'm gonna type in 5426. That's a MasterCard. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just typing in some random numbers after that. Okay, so now that I have that, let me go in and group all of this. Okay, now again, I'm gonna just, for the sake of time, I'm gonna select all of this just by swiping over it. You can see they all got grouped right here, or selected rather. And I'm unlock that one because I want that to be grouped as well. So I'm gonna swipe across it to select it. Now the shortcut key is Control-G. That's true of most programs, but I'm not gonna use Control-G because there's a right click and group. Again, the shortcut to a shortcut, how you like that, is the right click command. If it's there, use that. Remember that it's underneath the right click or the control click on the Mac, and that's going to save you from having to put your hand on control or command and G, right? So I'm going to hit group, and you see what it did. It automatically, I love that word automatically. That's my favorite word, you guys know. Automatically create this word group and stuff it in there. How cool is that? Okay. Now that I have it grouped, if whatever I do next, because it's in a group, will get done together. So I'm literally rotating all of this stuff together. Now I'm gonna bring in another image. Actually, let me add a drop shadow to this. So again, I'm gonna do my effect. Make sure that object gets selected first. Only what's selected gets affected, right? And I'm gonna do effect. By the way, if you didn't do that, let me show you what happens. If I didn't have it selected, because you may have the habit of doing this. And if I go stylize, drop shadow, it's like, why is that stupid thing not working? One of those moments. I know y'all never had those moments, right? Why is the stupid thing not working? Well, the reason that it's not working is because it's not selected, okay? And so you got to remember to select what you want to affect. So now that it's selected, you know it's selected because you see the little handles around it, right? Now let's do the exact same thing, right? Stylize, drop shadow, bam. There you have it, okay? I just got a little excited here, forgive me. And then click OK, we accept the default, and we got that. Now let's bring in another image and make this pop, if you will. We bring in that sunset image again. Remember Command and Control, Shift and P, right? And look for that sunset, click on it, and I'm gonna click and drag it right across the top. Like so. Obviously it's in front, so I'm gonna do Command and Control and the square brackets, remember, to push it to the back. Now obviously look pixelated because it's 200%. If I double click on the magnifying glass original size, you know, that's what it will look like. Again, so anyway, that is the combination of a clipping mask and a layer mask together. Okay, so you got the best of both worlds. So let's look at some other examples of clipping masks. So let's close this out and let's look at another example. So I'm gonna close this one up, turn it off. I'm gonna create a new layer. By the way, let me just double click on this. I'm gonna create a new layer, move it down, and we call this clipping mask 3. This will be another clipping mask example. And in this case, what I want to do, okay, let me look at my other screen. This time we're going to use multiple objects, multiple vector shape to create a clipping mask. The problem is it's going to present a problem for you, okay? Because you use a compound path. It doesn't use a compound path. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in a minute. Okay, so what I want to do is bring in another image. Let me see if this is the exact one I want to do. Yeah, so let's bring in another image. Again, Command, Control, Shift, and P. You'll be used to that key by now. And
Cornelius, are you using more than one? Okay, now I'm saying your screen changed.
Yeah, it wasn't coming up for some reason. So I'm gonna bring in this image right here. And I'm gonna click and drag it out like so. And then I'm gonna do a Shift O, remember that's how you get to the artboard. And I'm gonna tuck this in right here, tuck this side in to match the size of the image. Okay, so now that I have this image in here, I'm gonna add a little design pattern, if you will. I'm gonna use the Polygon Tool. So I'm gonna click and draw. I'm holding on to the Alt key. Now what the Alt key does, it helps you to lay down an image flat on its feet, if you will. And I'm holding on the Shift key. Between the Alt key and the Shift key, the Alt key will draw from the center, or the Command, Option rather, excuse me, on the Mac. The Shift key will constrain it, okay? So I'm gonna draw this polygon right here. It doesn't matter what color it is. And I'm gonna put it about right like so. and I'll hold on the Shift key, and I'll make it just a little bit bigger. Now I'm holding on the Alt key. Remember what it does? It will duplicate, and I'm gonna drag out a copy. Hold on the Shift key. Notice those little guides. I love those guides because it's gonna guide you to what you need to do. Notice it helps you to put it right directly under that. Now I'm gonna let go of the mouse, and then I'm gonna let go of the keys. Okay, that's how you do that. I'm gonna hold on the Alt key again, Option key, and I'm gonna drag again, hold on the Shift key. And what I like, I don't know if you can see it, but it will give you equal distance measurement between all of those polygons. So I'm gonna let go of the mouse, let go of the keys, okay? And maybe I'll put one more up at the top here. So I'm holding on the Alt key, start dragging, then hold on the Shift key. And notice it gives me those little measurements. I love that. And I'm gonna let go of the mouse, and then let go of the keys. Now I'm gonna select all four of them. I'm gonna hold on the Shift key, and I'm gonna just click on all four of them because I want to pull out a copy of that and move it over like so. Hold on, let go of the mouse, let go of the keys. Let's do it one more time, but on the other side. So I'm holding on the Alt key, move it on this side. And I'm just eyeballing this for the sake of time. I would probably, make sure it's even, but I'm gonna let go of the mouse, let go of the keys. Okay, and then I might do a couple more. So let's take these two and move them here. And we'll take the same two and move them over here. Good measure. Okay, so I got a whole slew of these polygons that's over that image. Now remember, the mask should always be on the top, right? So I got these objects, and if you look at the clipping path right here, you can see it created all these polygons. See that? A boatload of them, right? So I got all of these polygons on top of this image. You can see the image down at the bottom right here. So what I want to do is create a clipping mask. Now, the problem is it's not going to work. So I'm going to let you know that in advance. So particularly for beginners, because they'd be inclined to do this and get one of those moments, why this stupid thing not working? And one of those moments, which I hate. Okay, so watch. Again, I'm going to select all. And then I'm just lasso for the sake of time. Select all of them. You can see everything in green got selected over here, right? And then I'm gonna right click or control click on the Mac, and I'm gonna select Make Clipping Mask. Now watch what happened. Bam. Well, not too exciting because it only clipped the last image that I made, okay? And you can see right here, it just portion, didn't clip any of the rest. And that's because a clipping mask will only clip into a single shape, okay? Will only clip into a single shape. So I'm gonna do Control Z, or Z for you British folks out there, to undo that. But this time, I'm gonna create what they call a compound path, okay? Compound path will take several objects and make a single object out of it, okay? That's the advantage. I'm putting them together a lesson. Don't compound the problems by not knowing how to use compound path, okay? So you can compound the problem if you don't know how to use compound paths. Okay, so let's make a compound path out of these polygons, if you will. Now, let me just show you a trick of the trade, and then some of you may know this already, but don't do this. Don't hold down the Shift key and do click, 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 that can get old really, really fast if you got a lot of objects to select. Typically, a good practice to do is to select everything first, and then hold on the Shift key and deselect. Keep going to the isolation mode. Let me do that again. I'm gonna select everything, and then I'm gonna hold on the Shift key and click over here to deselect that image, and only the polygons are selected now. You can see that image is not selected anymore. Okay, that avoids you having to do a lot of click, 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 click to make multiple selections. Now what I want to do, again, is make this out of a compound path. Not a clipping mask, not yet. Okay, if you go up here to Object, notice there's clipping mask, then there's compound path make. Clipping mask make, don't make a mistake and do that. Compound path make, that's what I want to do. or Command and Control 8. Well, I don't want to do either one of those because that's too much effort for me. I want to be able to get to it without much fuss. And again, I just released it. So let me do it again. I'm gonna right click or control click and do look, not clipping mask, but compound path. Bam. Notice what it did. It made a compound path. Again, pay attention to what's going on in the library, and that's going to help you understand this stuff a lot better. Notice it created a compound. Remember all those polygons you saw earlier? Now it's just a single, emphasis there, single shape. Now that is a single shape, let the magic begin. Now I'm going to select both of these. Again, just swipe across the top. Select both. Right click. I'm doing the same thing I did before, but this time I'm not using those multiple shapes because it doesn't work. You saw that. I'm using a compound path. Now if I do make clipping mask, bam, I'm in business. Okay, and so now you see that that shape is literally clipped into all of those polygons because it's treated as a single unit. So what's the moral of the story here? Learn how to use compound paths, okay? One, if you're doing masking, you better know it. Two, compound path allows you to create holes within vector shapes, okay? Those are the two key players, the compound paths that you want to look at and remember. Okay, so another classical example of how to do that, and that is a compound path that helped me out in that manner. Now, let's do another one that you guys are probably familiar with, and that's the Vignette Effect. Okay, so I'm going to delete this clipping group right here. I think, yeah, let's see. Well, I'm undo this clip group. So again, I'm going to right click. Let me make sure it's selected first. I'm going to do Release Clipping Mask. You see right there? When I do that, it returns itself back to normal. Because I want to delete this for right now. Because I want to do another example, use that same image for the sake of time. But I want to create what they call a Vignette Effect. And again, I'm going to teach by mistake. I'm going to show you what not to do. Just like we made a mistake by not creating a compound path for that previous example, we're going to do the same thing for this one, because beginners, they would have a tendency to want to do this and it won't work. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to use my oval tool, the ellipse tool, that's shortcut keys L, and I'm going to draw an oval, because typically that's what a vignette shape usually looks like. And I'm going to scale that up much as I can to get as much of the image of her as possible. Now I got that, and I'm going to add an effect to it. You guys are familiar with a Gaussian blur in Photoshop, right? Same thing in Illustrator. Okay, so watch what happens. Watch what happens when I make this I'm gonna give it a feather effect, right? So I'm gonna do effect, and I want to go to blur and then Gaussian blur. I'm sure you guys have done this. If you've done Photoshop, you have used Gaussian blur for sure. And oh, that's way too much. Okay, and I'm just giving it a soft edge. You guys, can you see the edge being softened right here? So 4 or 5 pixels soften the edges right here. I'm gonna click OK. And you can kind of see that those edges are softened, right? Again, I want to clip that image of her into that shape. The good news is you can clip anything inside of a mask. Okay, it could be text, it could be what you see here, oval or triangle, polygon, you name it. Anyway, let's try by mistake. Now, again, this is not going to work, right? But if I select the two, just swipe across the two, both of them, and right click and do Make Clipping Mask again, watch what happens. Bam. Now, that didn't work. It clipped it. Yes, it did. But what it didn't do was to maintain that feathered edge. Okay, didn't do that. The reason for that is, again, you got to know the difference. You got to know the definition of vector versus bitmap. Remember, vector is resolution independent, right? It's use a formula to define the shape, right? Whereas bitmap uses pixels, right, to define a shape or an image, right? And so because a mask is a vector, it's not going to maintain that feathered edge because by definition, a vector will always be crisp, will have a sharp edge. So how do we do that? Well, let's undo that and let's apply the other mask. So we do Control Z to undo. And this time we want to select both of them, right? And go to our transparency panel. Remember, that's where you do the clipping or the opacity mask. Not the clipping mask, but the opacity mask. And watch, I'm click on this, make mask, bam. Okay, notice the feathering, the feathered edge, if you will, has been maintained because I'm using, notice your mask right there. Notice the golden rule, black conceals, white reveals, right? So in areas white, get revealed, in areas black, get concealed or hidden away. Now, it's important to note, and this is particularly true for beginners, that this is not white, okay? That just happened to be the white background. If I, to prove that to you, if I just took this image and drag it off, you can see indeed that the image, the background that is transparent, okay? Black conceals, white reveals. You gotta remember that rule of masking, okay? And so you can pop this on any background and it'll look just as good. Okay, so there you have it. Another example of, a typical example of using clipping masks. Okay, so let's look at something. Let's see what else we got. I'm looking at my notes here. Let's look at another typical example of, and this is a knockout effect that I'm gonna create. So let me create another artboard. I'm gonna turn this one off. We'll create me a new layer. And it's gonna be clipping mask 4. And let me just do, let me see, any size will work. So anyway, I'm just drawing out a new, by the way, that's the artboard, Shift O right there. That allows you to draw a new artboard. So anyway, I got this artboard. I want to bring in an image. So again, I'm gonna do Command, Control, Shift, P. And bring in this beautiful image right here, the skyline. And I'm gonna click and drag it like so. Okay, and I'm gonna do Shift O so I could tuck that in like so. Okay, so I got this nice scene here. What I'm gonna do is use my rectangular tool and with the foreground white, because remember black conceal, white reveal, and you see the reason for in a minute. And I'm gonna create a box across that image. Again, notice there's a box on top of that image, right? A white box on top of that image. So what I want to do now is use my text tool. You could type T, and I'm gonna type in all caps. Hold on the Control key and scale it up like so, way big. And hit the V key, so I don't have to go way up there. It's working now. It wasn't working earlier. I don't know what the deal was, but computers don't work when you're teaching. You ever notice that? Okay, so there we go. So we got Sydney on top of this. So you got Sydney, and then you got this white shape, and then you got the background. You can see it right here, Sydney, white shape background, right? What I want to do is cut a hole, as it were, using that text as a cookie cutter. I like to think of mask as a cookie cutter, where it's going to cut a hole in there, and you'll be able to see through it. So again, I'm gonna lock this bottom layer, and I'm gonna just select these two, and I'm gonna right click as usual. You see me do this. This is my, what, 4th or 5th time doing it. I'm gonna do Make Clipping Mask. Let's see that one. Hold on. No, I actually not. I don't want to do Clipping Mask. I want to do Opacity Mask. So I'm gonna select these two, and I'm gonna click on this mask right here. So watch what happens. Again, it disappears, and you know why, right? Because it's a black mask. By default, when you do a mask, it's gonna give you a black mask and everything disappears. And as a beginner, you might freak out, you know, where did my image go, right? One of those moments. Well, you can always invert that mask. But what I wanna do is, and we'll see later on how this clipping thing works better. In fact, I might do that in the next example. Because the clipping, it only clips to the white portion of the mask, and that confuses people. So watch what happens. I'm going to select here, and well, I got the text, but I want this background. Watch what happens when I click here, and then click both of them off. Now I've literally, what they call knockout. There used to be a program back in the days called knockout where you can kind of cut things out. Notice I've cut out the area where that text was shown, was written, right? It knocked that out. Now you can see behind, you can see through where the text used to be. Now the good news is, and the reason why you would want to do this, it's non-destructive. Again, the golden rule when working with Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, to name a few. By the way, that's the title of my new book, because I say that a lot, is to make sure your work is non-destructive. Now, what if that was an Austin skyline? Well, all I need to do is go in here. Well, actually, I got to unrelease it first. So let me do that. So look, I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna unrelease the mask. Remember how to do that. So you do release, right? I'm gonna come in here and type in all caps, Austin, right? Make mask. Make sure both of them selected. Oh, Control Z. And then do the same thing again. Let's see, what am I doing wrong? Oh, I was on the wrong thing, dog it. Okay, I made a mistake by, I was on the image and not the thing. So that's gonna mess me up. Let me undo that. But bottom line is, you can change the image and then the text will change as well. I'm gonna move on just for the sake of time, but that's how you knock out an image. Let me do another one, another example to better illustrate how this clipping mask works. Okay, this would be example 5. And this is going to give you a better appreciation of how that works. And so I'm going to create me a new artboard. And I'm going to type in a company logo. And so let's type in all caps. Hold on the control key, and I'm going to scale it up without having to go way up to over here somewhere trying to look for that, right? So I'm going to make that really big. Okay, so now that I have it big and bold, what I want to do is, and let me just change the text to a different color so you can see this better. So now I got this text in here, and let's say I wanted to put a little line through here. Well, I'm gonna use an oval tool, an oval shape that is, using the ellipse tool. And again, I'm gonna use black and Control Z. By the way, when you have something selected, you got to make sure you deselect it, otherwise it's going to change colors on you. I want to use black and white for my oval tool that I'm about to do. So notice I got a black stroke with a white fill. So that's important to note, because you guys know the golden rule of masking, right? Black conceals, white reveals. If you don't learn anything else tonight, for crying out loud, know that. Okay, so watch what I do. I'm gonna just click here and drag this oval shape of sort on top of that. Now I'm gonna bump up the the stroke like so. And then I'm going to use a tool called a width tool. If you guys ever use that, I love that tool. And then you can change the width of your stroke any size you want. And so I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna squeeze it this way. And I'm gonna come over here and squeeze it over here. So you kind of see I got that little sweeping effect, right? Now that I have the shape that I want and this mask, again, I'm gonna select the two, right? So just swipe across the two. They're both selected. And again, let me open it up so you can see they both selected. Now I'm gonna use my opacity mask, right? Now again, remember, black conceals, white reveals. Now you appreciate this clipping mask effect a little bit better. Watch what happens when I click on make mask. Bam. Okay, it did what it was told to do, right? Black conceal, anything in black is get hidden away. White reveals. Remember that everything underneath that was under the mask gets revealed. The problem is I'm missing the top half of my mask, of my logo, that is, right? Well, what I can do is unclip this, bam, and bring it back in, okay? And notice now I have now again, this thing is still editable at all times. I could come in here and, you know, move this thing down. I could rotate it, you know, do whatever I want. But I know the golden rule of black conceals, white reveals. Now, this clipping makes it where it clips the whole image that is underneath the mask. So all of it's being shown. Otherwise, when you don't clip it, it's going to show whatever's outside of the mask. When you clip it, it's going to only show what's in the mask. Oh, that's fresh off the press there, you guys. I got a little revelation on that. Okay, that's good. Okay, because I had a hard problem trying to explain that. Okay, let me say that again because that was all good. Okay, so when it's clipped, only what's under the mask is going to get clipped. You guys see that? When I unclip it, if there's some areas outside of the mask, it's not going to get clipped, but it's going to still be shown, even though it's not part of the mask. Okay, so this is a prime example of how that clipping thing worked. I wanted to do this one because, man, I had a hard time trying to figure out how that clipping stuff works. Okay, but again, if you can master that clipping, if you invert the mask, you can see what's going to happen, right? Because that's the bottom part of that mask. And then this is coming back in because this is black, remember? All you got to remember, black conceals, white reveals, right? And clip, it will clip it to the mask. Anything outside the mask still gets shown. Let me illustrate yet another example of that to further prove that clipping technique. Again, because I'll tell you, if you can master this right here, invert is easy. I mean, black becomes white, white becomes black. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that one out, right? But the clipping, for most people, particularly beginners, they don't understand that because they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. So let's look at yet another typical classical effect, which is called reflect or reflection, just to illustrate that. So let's go out and create another artboard. In fact, let's create a new layer to support it. So again, I'll get out of the mask, let me create artboard first, so I forget. And I'm gonna create a new layer. And then this is going to be clipping mask. Man, I'm just talking about all clipping masks tonight. All good though. Okay, this is clipping mask 6. Okay, so what I want to do is just draw a little black background. Let's do that. And the reason why that changed again because I had it selected, but that's okay. I'm gonna draw this black box on top here. And maybe tuck it in. Don't need to, but let's just tuck that in. And let's just move this. Yeah, okay, yeah. So there we go. We got, this is like my black table that I'm gonna reflect an image in, okay? So let's hit the T, remember T for text tool, and I'm gonna type in reflect, and obviously I wanna scale that up. And I hit the V key, get the selection tool without going way up there again. Now, obviously, I want to change the color because the black on black is not going to work, right? So let's just change it to color that so you can actually see it. Again, you got to have it selected before it can be affected. So I need to double click on it first before I can do that. And bam, you can see it now. Okay, you can see that. Okay, I'm going to hit the V key again so I get my selection tool. And maybe I want to scale that up. Maybe it's like that. So anyway, I got the word reflect, and what I want to do is reflect that word. So again, I could go up to this menu again. I hate, the goal is avoid having to go up here unless you have to. Okay, that's the golden rule. Okay, avoid going up to that menu unless you have to. If you right click here and do transform, I want to do transform reflect. So I'm gonna do a reflect, and obviously I don't want to do that reflect. And you see it got all kind of reflection. I want to do a horizontal reflect, but if I click OK, it's going to reflect it down here. I don't want to reflect it down here. I want to copy it. So if I click OK, it would just reflect it and get rid of this one. I don't want to do that. I want to keep the copy up here and reflect the copy below. So I'm going to hit the copy instead of the OK. So now if I click OK, bam, get both of them, right? And just so we can kind of see it better, I'm going to use my down arrow to nudge it just out of the way a little bit so you can kind of see, the dividing line between the two. Now I'm going to take another image and I was writing in the wrong layer here, so let me move all of this stuff here. In fact, let me just do this. I was supposed to be in that layer, so let me do edit, paste in place. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so we got the image, we got what we'll be reflecting. We're going to use a clipping mask, no, opacity mask rather, but I want to lock this layer because I don't want to move it. And I'm going to lock this, not this one, but I'm going to lock this one because I don't want to mess with that one. All I want to do is have this as my thing. Now, what I'm going to do is use my rectangular tool, but this time we're going to use not black or white, we're going to use a gradient. Okay, gradient will give you different levels or shades of black and white. Okay, so I'm going to use my gradient tool, and I'm going to click and drag a gradient. Let me see how I want to do that. Let's just do it like that. In fact, let's just do it like this because I want to illustrate this concept better. Okay, so I notice I didn't get all of the image at the bottom here, just a half of the image. And this is going to illustrate that clipping concept even better. Okay, now the problem is my gradient is not in the right direction, right? So I want to click on this and use this, what they call annotator. And I want my shadow to go from white to black from the top, bottom. Now I'm going to select both of them. Click on my V key to get my selection tool. I'm going to swipe across both of them. And notice they both get selected, right? My rectangle and my reflect word. And then I'm going to do make mask and watch and let the magic begin. Watch what happens. Bam. Notice it clipped that shape into that mask, the text shape into that mask. And you can play around with the gradient because you might want to change and make it fade a little bit easier. But what I want to show you is right here. If I click on this, notice you can still see the rest of my image because it's outside of the mask. Okay. So again, when you click on clip only what's under the mask get clipped. If there's stuff hanging out the mask, you know, don't let it all hang out, as they say, right? If stuff hanging out the mask, it's not going to be affected by the mask, okay? And so you can see that. So even though I got a mask here, this is still hanging out outside because it's unclipped. So most of the time, you typically want to clip what's in the mask, as in this case, okay? And again, I can always use my gradient tool and change it to whatever I want. Oh, what did I do? Okay. I can update my gradient however I want to modify. But for the sake of time, let me see if I can just do a little bit. Yeah, kind of, let's see. And again, I can adjust that. I'm not gonna play with it too much. You guys get the drift though. And obviously you want to turn off that clip again. And I got a hard edge right there. So I want to probably make this longer as well. And then adjust my gradient some more to make it fade into the darkness, as it were. But I'm not going to go over all of that. You guys know how to do gradients and stuff like that. So anyway, that's another example of using the opacity mask. Okay, I said clipping mask. That was actually the opacity mask. Okay, so let's look at another example, which is really cool. I'm going to create a new, let me get out of this. Always good to get out. Create a new layer. And I'm going to create a geometrical effect, which is really cool. I like this effect. I've seen this over the years. Special effects, I'm going to call it FX. Okay, just for the sake of time. And let me create a new layer. Now, what I want to do is take the Polygon Tool, remember that one. And the key here is to make sure that this one doesn't have a fill color, just a stroke color. So I want the stroke to be black, but no fill, okay? And so what I want to do is click and drag, hold on my shift key and my alt option key. And I got this shape right here, nothing fancy about it, right? But let the magic begin. So I'm gonna select this object and I'm gonna do effect. I wanna go to, let's see, distort and transform, and then transform. Click on that and you get this beautiful dialog box right here. What I wanna do is this is a good way of making multiple objects, or what instances as some places calls it, right? I'm gonna make 30 copies of that polygon. So I'm gonna type in 30. Now, you don't see it, even though the preview is selected because they're on top of each other, okay? Then I'm gonna tell it to scale itself at 95%, horizontally and vertically, okay, 95%. And then I'm gonna change the angle to about 5. And what did I do wrong? I don't think I had it selected. So let me do that again. Always good to select stuff, right? So let's go back to effect. Try that again. Type in 30 or whatever number you want. Now I'm gonna change this to 95. Change this, you see what it did? It created this little effect. I'm gonna do 95 again. And you see what it did. So what you have is 30 copies at, they get smaller as, by 95%. So, it's keep on making it smaller. Now what we want to do is change the angle, and that's where the fun begins. Now, if I change the angle, let me just do 5 and tab away so you can kind of see what it does. And I'm gonna scale this up, see what it did? Okay, I'm gonna click OK, and we'll make this bigger so you can see it better. So I got this nice, cute little effect, right? Now, in fact, I'm gonna make it even bigger. And what about that? Okay, it's way big. But just like any other shape in Illustrator, you got this little dot right here. I don't know if you guys see the little dot right here. Watch what happens. And I notice it's kind of pixelated because I'm zooming in. Even though it's vector, it's going to get pixelated on screen, okay? Just to let you know. But watch what happens when I click on this. Pay attention to what happened to the curves here. When I click on this, notice how these are starting to curve now. In fact, you can go all the way to a circle, which is probably not what you want to do. But you can literally create some really interesting shapes by just pulling on one of these, I guess it's the only one in this case, handles, and you create the curves that in here. Now, let's take that even a step further, if you will. Let's add a gradient to it, okay? So make sure you're on the stroke, because that's where you need to add the gradient. And right now, it's just a black and white, nothing spectacular about that. Let's add a gradient to it that's gonna make it pop a little bit. So I'm gonna double click on the gradient tool, and I'm gonna add some colors. So let's add, let's see, I was thinking about getting my, okay, let's just do red. Let's add another color stop. Let's make it red, green. Let's add another color stop and double click on it. Blue for you web folks out there. And let's just change this one to, I don't know, another color. Again, that doesn't look too bad, but really make this pop, you want to add a black background to it. And let me illustrate that. Move all this out the way. Okay, so I'm gonna use my rectangular tool again. I will make sure I deselect it, otherwise I'm gonna change the color. I want black and white. Use my black and white. I want a black background with no stroke. So we'll turn that off. Now, I'm gonna use my rectangular tool and I'm gonna draw a box over it. Like so, obviously you can't see it because it's in the front. So I'll hit Command and Control and then a square bracket, bam. You see how that pops when you have a black background on it? Okay, if I double click on this, you can kind of see that's a really cool shape. You could do that with any shape. Okay, you can do the polygon, the square, the triangle. You know, you can create some really fancy footwork, if you will, with that tool. How we doing on time?
You got about 15 minutes.
Okay, good, good. Because I'm just scratching the surface. Let's do a real quick one for you guys, for you logo makers out there. This will be a quick one.
Cornelius, I do regret that at the beginning of the meeting, we skipped introductions, and we also didn't get a group photo. Before people might be peeling off at the end, or at the end, I'd like to ask everybody, when you stop sharing your screen, to get a grid photo so we can see who showed up.
Okay, dope. All right, so let's do another one. This time, let me see what I want to do. Let's do something real fancy. I'm looking through my examples on this other screen. We did the shadow, we did the 3D. Might do that one. Oh yeah, so let's do this logo one, if you will. That's what I was looking for. So let's draw another canvas. And I'm gonna type in the word it's king. Scale that up like so. And let's just change the color to, I don't know, blue, I guess, and the color do. Okay, I got Okay, so now that I have the color, oh, Control Z. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Oh, Control Z. Now I'm gonna apply what they call a warp effect to it, and that's this little thing right. Let's see, where's my, yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. So anyway, you got all kind of shapes that you can distort this thing to. Obviously, since this is Fish King, I want it to look like a fish, right? Which is right here. But you can select any of these other shapes. If you do that, you get that. So I'm gonna do Fish King right here, fish rather. Click OK, and then I'm gonna use my pen tool, and let's do. Yeah, I guess we could use the same color, just about. Okay. So anyway, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just click, 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 and then click, and then I use my just change the color, and then maybe I could use a little circle. I'll just change that black and oops, Control Z. Always got to get off of the object before you change colors, otherwise you're gonna change it. On black and white, no stroke, and I'm gonna use a little over tool and make a little eye. Okay, and then do V to click away. Okay, so there you have a nice little logo in less than a minute. Okay, now the good news again is it's non-destructive. What if I wanted to do, instead of Fish King, what if I wanted to queen fish or whatever, I don't know. I'm just playing around with it. So anyway, let me move that out of my way and go back and notice that it automatically got updated to that. And again, I can move my the V key. Maybe I want to tuck that in on there. And I left my eyeball there somewhere. Get the eyeball there. And again, I can use my nudge. Anyway, bottom line is that thing is I can change it to whatever word I want. It's still going to maintain the shape of that fish, if you will. Now, again, you can go in and manipulate the, this to however you want using a direct select tool like you do in any other application that use the pen tool. Okay, so that's a cool example. Let's see. Let's do a 3D thing real quick because that's a real, I love 3D. The thing I do a lot in Illustrator is 3D. So let me just show you, but we're gonna do a whole lot more than just 3D. It's gonna use the reflect tool and other things as well. So let me create a new artboard, and for some reason, there we go. I lost my toolbar. Let's create a new artboard real quick, and let's do a 3D object. And show you how to do that real quick. What I wanna do is use my flip tool. I'm gonna find the center. I love this feature. You just gotta hover over until you see center. Hold on the Alt key to draw from the center. Hold on the Shift key and draw out a shape like so. And this is no stroke but a fill. Okay. Now I'm gonna use my Polygon tool, and I'm gonna change the color, by the way, just so you can see this better. So let's just choose red. And now I'm gonna use my polygon to hold on the Shift key and to draw a polygon like so. And I'm gonna move that. And now again, pay attention to what it's doing. See, I gave you those two. I love that. Those two guidelines. I love that because it's gonna center and center that circle and tangent for you mathematicians out there. Like so, right? Now I'm gonna use the reflect tool. Remember the reflect tool? So you got these different tools up here. I want to, not reflect, I want to rotate. Okay, I want to rotate this around this circle. You'll see the reason in a minute. So I hit the rotate tool, and I'm going to find that center because I want to rotate it via this center. Now I can click here and move it. Now if I hold on my shift key, I can constrain it. Remember, the shift key constrains stuff to line, angle, curves, and different things, right? Now, so I'm holding down the shift key and it's going to lock it. See, I can move and it's going to lock it in at minus 45. Now I want to let go of the mouse. Now if I let go of the mouse and then let go of the key, it's going to move there. I don't want it to move there. I want to duplicate it there, okay? So I need to hold down the Alt key as well. So if I hold down my Alt key, notice I get that double arrow, that black and white, that's your dead giveaway, that it's going to duplicate. Let go of the mouse, let go of the keys, okay? Now I got a duplicate of that. Now the process that every designer loves is the step and repeat, right? You control D and voila. It just automatically knows to do each one of those at 45 degrees. I love that. Okay, now I'm gonna use my selection tool, select everything, and then we'll use my Pathfinder tool, and I'm going to subtract out those shapes. That's what I did. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. This time, in fact, let me just change the color so you can see this better. Not that you need to, but I'm holding on the Alt key to draw from this, oops, wrong thing. Guess I could use that. I want to do an ellipse. So now, notice I got those two shapes. So I'm gonna select both of these. And I'm gonna do my Pathfinder tool again. Where did it go? Window Pathfinder. Okay, this time I'm gonna subtract out, this is my cookie cutter. I'm gonna subtract front. So again, I gotta select both of them, hit this button right here, bam. I'm gonna hold on the Alt key, pull out me a copy, because what I wanna do is what I wanna do, let's see, I wanna go up here and do an effect. Free distort is what I want to do. This is how you create drop shadow. So now I can just lay this thing down. You can see I'm kind of laying this little shape down right here. And I'm doing this really fast for the sake of time. Click OK, and notice that shape got laid down. I could apply gradient to it. Not that gradient, just a regular gradient to it. Black and white. And again, I can adjust the gradient, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna move that right there, and I can push that in back. But before I do that, I want to convert this shape to 3D. Real easy to do. If I do Effect, 3D, Extrude and Bevel, let the magic begin. Watch what happens when I click OK. Look at that, isn't that cool? And by the way, I can rotate that however I want, just like that. Click OK, and let's see, maybe tilt it like that. Click OK, that's fine. Okay, now I got my 3D shape without much fuss. Just with one click, put my little drop shadow. Remember, move that to the back, you know, and again, I can move this however I want. And I got a nice little tree. Again, I would play around with that a little bit more, you know, to get it looking good, but nice, cool effect. And again, I could do whatever I want with that shape. Okay. One more, and we'll call it a night. Okay, this is a nice, cool effect that you can do. And again, I'm creating a new artboard just for the, and I'm gonna do this real quick, and I'm not gonna worry about creating a layer. I'm gonna type in T and S, and obviously that's way too small. So we'll scale that up. And the font I want to use is called Century School Book. That's what I want to do. See what I'm doing here. So for you logo makers out there, what I want to do first of all is convert this to an outline. If you've done Illustrator, you know you got to convert sometime text to an outline. So I'm gonna right click and do convert to outline, and then I'm ungroup it. because I want to move it. And I'm going to select, actually, I'm going to use my direct select tool is what I meant to say. I'm going to select the bottom half of this and I'm going to just push it down like that, right, to make it bigger. I'm going to take this letter, put it on top like that, okay? And actually, let's just give it a nice color. This color's not going to work for me. Let's do that color, and we could change the color whatever we want, just to show you that. Do that color. Oops. Why is it not selecting it? Okay, there we go. Anyway, I'm going to take this shape, put it on here. I'm going to use something similar to the Pathfinder tool, which is new, relatively new to Illustrator, and that is the shape builder tool, which is becoming my favorite tool in Illustrator. So I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to use this tool right here called the shape builder. And I'm going to change the color, just to show you that I can change the color on the fly. Let's just select that blue color. And I'm going to swipe down what I want to change, just like that, bam. And notice I got that S look like it's kind of wrapping around there like a snake, if you will. Select both of those, and let's give them a stroke. Okay, and then bump it up a little bit so you can see it. And then if I click away, voila. Less than a minute, I got, you know, a nice little text effects, if you will, without much fuss. Okay, I have a lot more to do. I have a lot more examples, but I think that's a good little flavor of, you know, some special effects that you can do in Illustrator as well as Photoshop. I got most of these from another website where they spend like 10 pages doing something I do in like 3 steps. Okay, because I always like to simplify stuff to make it easy. Any questions? Anybody?
You make it look so easy.
Yeah, it takes practice.
And it is. A great presentation. Thank you.
So what do we want to do now? Do the group picture?
Well, we want to do a group picture, and we also want to talk about what kind of presentation we might have next month.
Okay.
So that may take more deliberation. So if you could stop sharing your screen,
Okay.
then we can go into grid mode, and then we can all turn on our video and show our tired faces. It's a little late for me. So anybody else willing to smile for the camera, and we'll take a group photo?
Hold on.
Hey, thank you. Okay.
Hold on. Let's see. Hold on just a sec.
The Fat Cat's anonymous. There's no name there, so.
Is that it?
It's odd when people turn their video on. I'm not seeing their names.
Okay, let me do that.
It's okay. We're humans. That's all we need. So I'll just grab a.
What you doing, Kenneth? Eat, sleep, and what? Oh, that's not Kenneth.
Very funny. Cool.
Eat, sleep, salsa. Gotta have salsa.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I did not get the screenshot. I got text in my clipboard. Let me test and get this right. There we go. We'll have all 7 of us.
Okay.
In the plus Mike.
Yeah, because my computer's all
with his fly. So, do we have any ideas of what people might want to learn or see presented or present? Well, let's see what comes up at the volunteer meeting.
Ask that again.
Pardon me?
Can you ask that question again? I missed it.
The question is for upcoming meeting topics. Is there a topic that you would like to learn about to see presented? Maybe we can find somebody who can present it. Or is there something that you are interested in doing and showing other people how it's done? And
I
there's
just was wondering
a
if,
great incentive. When you volunteer, you get 5 credits on the raffle prize. So you stand a much better chance of winning the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. What, please? I'm sorry.
I
I'm
was
just checking
wondering
to see-
if someone could teach us how to use the mesh tool in Illustrator sometime.
You mean the gradient mesh?
Yes.
It's been 15 years since I've used it, but I used to be pretty good at it.
Really?
Yeah,
I've
I did a
never used-
photorealistic car like a million years ago in college. But I could probably do one on
Is that
gradient meshes
topic
next
big
month.
enough for a whole presentation, or is it just part of a presentation?
It's really not big enough for a whole presentation. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it's pretty simple. At least it used to be, like 15 years ago. I don't know, it might be now.
Is there something related, like adding skins and things like that, that might
I don't
expand it
really
into
do
a?
that much Illustrator work, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Most of what I would probably cover, Cornelius probably covered today is the problem.
Yeah, I've never used a mesh tool. That's one of those artistic tools, right? And I can't draw a stick person. You know, I'd love to do 3D in Illustrator, and I've done that before. You saw an example. That's a real simple example. But the mesh tool is for people that like to do, you know, fancy artwork. Oh, by the way, someone had a question about, can you apply a blur shadow to the gears? Yes, you can. And you could probably use that technique that we did earlier. Remember we did the vignette, right? And we applied a blur. Do the same thing for that shadow if you want to apply a blur to it. Because remember, a clipping mask is a vector mask, so it's going to always have sharp edges, right? So you're going to have to use the opacity mask to create a blur effect, like we did with the vignette example. Any other questions? Anything that, for clarity's sake, that somebody want to know? Again, if you can master a clipping mask and an opacity mask, you can go a long way. A lot of people don't use it, but I'm telling you, it can save you a ton of time. And I just scratched the surface of probably half of the stuff that I went over in my class at Goodwill training.
Does anybody here know Lightroom? We've had requests for Lightroom in the past.
Yeah, I've never learned Lightroom.
I
I
have
don't know.
not been using it for the past. I was using it a lot and then I stopped, but I wouldn't say I'm current or capable of presenting. But we might put it out to our membership on the mailing list asking, you know, who works with it, who would be willing to do it. That might be a way.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Lightroom myself. I mean, I know it's used for photography, but.
Well, it's used for many different purposes. It can be used as a library organizing tool to keep track of your images, but it can also be used to optimize, to batch process, to rename, to adjust color, to do all kinds of effects on files in a group. And one of the things that I very much like about it is it has this spray cam thing, so that say you want to put a keyword on an image or dozens of images, you can, with your mouse, apply keywords to random images. It just, there's all kinds of fancy things that it does. But it's a very complicated program. So let's see if we can find someone to present on that next month, or another topic. So I'll send out a notice about the volunteer thing and also a call for somebody who can present next month.
And I know it's not Adobe, but I wouldn't mind doing one on Blender if anybody wants to learn that. So
I would love
What
to
is Blender?
Blender is a free 3D modeling program. So you can actually just, it's kind of like Maya or ZBrush, but it's completely free. It's open source, I think, and it's really powerful. It's what I've been using to build models for stuff like this, and my weird, creepy banana guy, and I've been using that to build models with that. How to sculpt and do stuff like that.
And you got a 3D
Do you need a
printer.
3D printer?
Well, no, I mean, it's used for even movies and video games too. People do like special effects for movies. They build character models for video games. They build 3D models for 3D printing. You know, I built brackets, shelves in it for 3D to print out for my shelves here in the room. So.
Well, let's see what we come up with. If we don't have an Adobe product, Blender sounds great. And maybe we just want to do that anyway. How do people feel about it?
Yeah.
And then I've also used Photoshop in Blender, so I can actually create textures using gray maps to go ahead and then apply to a model. So that way I can, you know, basically deform the pixels with an image. So that way I can get like stone and stuff like that. Although I'm not the best at that. I'm still more in the modeling phase for stuff because I do most of my texturing by hand afterward. But it's possible. It's just not super easy.
I say we have a meeting topic unless something else comes up very strongly in the next, between now and Tuesday when we have our volunteer meeting.
Cool.
Let's plan for that. We'll announce it after next Tuesday.
That'll work.
Or maybe sooner because
Someone had a question about could I finish up, because I only cover about half of the examples that I usually give. Can I cover the other examples? And yes, I can.
that'd be great. Do you think that's a whole evening, or would you want to combine it with other things? Like maybe if we can find somebody.
That would be a whole evening. And most of the time when I teach this stuff, I'm rushing through it. Usually this class that I teach is a month long. Okay. So I'm literally.
So we're really lucky. We're getting
I'm literally
it.
putting a 2-pound balloon in a 1-pound bag.
Yeah.
Or a phrase. So I'm talking fast. Usually I'm taking my time teaching this stuff.
And it's being recorded, so if you talk too fast, we can listen to it again.
Or we can just play it at like 0.5 speed and it's normal.
Okay, I think we have a few meeting ideas, and I want to thank Cornelius for a wonderful presentation tonight. Anything else, Kenneth, before we wrap it up?
I think that'll be it for tonight. Come to, like we said, we have a volunteer meeting on Tuesday. That doesn't mean you need to go ahead and present if you come to that meeting. You know, maybe you want to help out with something else. We have a lot to do. Donna left really big shoes, and unfortunately not everybody here can fill them by themselves. So, you know, come get involved, get some tickets, have some fun.
Yeah, we're just looking for people to help us get the word out about this group and to participate in the social media and spreading the word, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
hope to see you on Tuesday. I'm going to close the meeting up. I don't think that there's anything in the chat room that we need to save, is there? Oh, no, we have the upcoming. Yeah. I don't think I need to save it. Okay. See you next week, I hope.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cornelius. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for coming. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.